Hello everyone, how are we doing? How are we doing in the chat? Got all the OGs in there. Antonio's in there, Sally's in there, Jamie's in there. How are we all doing? Average Formula 1 fan as well. Lofi, how you doing? Budget Gamer, Akishi, OJ, Nathaniel, Real Racers, Brody. How are we all feeling? It's actually not raining in Spa. It feels crazy to say. It looks like we might have a dry race in Belgium. It's unheard of in Formula One. Especially, I just feel like, I don't know, maybe 2021 has like distorted my idea of what a Belgian Grand Prix is like, what a Spa race is like. And it's a little bit harsh. Spa is one of the most incredible races on the Formula One calendar. There's a reason that is known as one of the best tracks of all time in all motorsport. But I don't know, that 2021 season, it just like has distorted my whole idea of what a Spa race is like. And I can't remember it being dry. Ariosto, thank you so much for the membership. 9 months. That is absolutely insane. Thank you so much for all of your support and all the support on the channel. Jeez Louise, 9 months. That is just gone flash by ridiculously quickly. How are we all doing then? What are our predictions? We'll get to that momentarily. Don't you worry. Kim, hello. Real Racer wants Max to win. Gonna be tough from 11th place, but considering the pace that he showed in qualifying, it's not out of the question. And obviously, one of his better tracks on the calendar as well. Do feel, though, you know, the McLaren's starting a little bit further up. The Ferrari on pole position. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Max Verstappen from 11th place. He's got a good afternoon's worth of work to do if he is going to be able to close that gap to the top of the pack. Shall we get into it then? Shall we have a little look at some bits and pieces over on the community tab, get into our predictions? So if you don't know, over on the community tab, it's very active over there. If you're not checking the community tab often, you're making a mistake. Like, I know that we put out the live streams, like right now. I know that we have the long form videos, the short form videos. We try and cover all bases here on this channel, but the community tab is the absolute, just the cherry on top of the ice cream in terms of the depth of content and the conversations that we get over there. But over on the community tab, earlier in the week, I always throw up these predictions here. You have to predict the winner, the podium, your surprise, your best team, your struggle, your flop team. And over on this community tab, let's have a little look at what people have been saying. A lot of people going for Verstappen straight off the bat as the winner. Lando Norris in there as well. Even a shout for Charles Leclerc. Lenz had a feeling that Charles Leclerc was going to be in the mix. The best car being McLaren. Best team Red Bull, of course. It's interesting. Best car McLaren. Best team Red Bull. Are we allowed to do that? Is that a little bit of a slight at the strategy there, maybe? Let's change that up just a touch so we can see it a little bit clearer. Oh, can I zoom in? Can I zoom in? Can I zoom in? There we go. Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris. Okay. Bit of a mix. Lando, Oscar on the podium there from Anja. Rocky Studios, Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton. Mercedes low on the starting grid. Well, they're actually pretty good. They're not too bad. Loving all these predictions, though. Hamilton, Verstappen, Sainz on the podium. NASCAR Aviation, dude, that would be impressive. Checo has a good race, P4. I mean, I think you'd be hoping for more than P4, to be honest with you, after qualifying yesterday. Russell, Norris, Verstappen podium from Anime Garden. Surprise, Lewis Hamilton, disaster class. After winning in Silverstone, wants to throw Hamilton right under the bus once again. Getting some predictions in the chat as well. I hope that Lando Norris wins. Verstappen will be 3rd and Leclerc will be 2nd, says Maxim. I could see that happening. I don't know who you're slotting into 1st place, though. If Verstappen's 3rd and Leclerc's in 2nd, Lando Norris wins, says Waffles Gaming. McLaren with another Ferrari strategy decision, says Kim. I love that McLaren are slowly inheriting that, aren't they? That the poor strategy choices used to be just slam dunk Ferrari. It is now slowly turning, not in a positive light if you're a McLaren fan such as myself. In fact, I'm just going to do this very quickly. Let's make this a little bit nicer to look at, shall we? There we go. Podium, Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, winner, Lando Norris. Says Vimsky, Windows 63 official. Podium, Max, Hulkenberg, Hulkenberg, Hamilton. Just completely went over that. I was like, I just saw Hamilton, read Hulkenberg. Jeez Louise. Hulkenberg in third place would be absolutely stunning. I mean, it's actually not impossible. I think there'd have to be quite a few teams and drivers collide with walls, but it does feel like the Haas car has set themselves up for a dry race, and that was why they were maybe a little bit further off the pace in terms of qualifying. And I think that's the one thing that, well, let's get into it, shall we? Should we have a little look at the qualifying board as it was yesterday? Because I think that's the one thing that really could change how this looks throughout today, because a lot of drivers and a lot of teams opted for a wet weather setup. So McLaren, for instance, they said yesterday that they have edged slightly towards a drier setup. That's why Norris and Piastri weren't quite as high up, weren't in contention for pole position in the way that we maybe thought they were going to be. Same with Carlos Sainz down in 7th place. He said he went for a little bit more of a drier weather setup, which obviously played against him on the intermediate tyres yesterday in qualifying, but looks to be playing in his favour today during the Grand Prix, because it's looking like it is going to be a bone dry race. That's why I'm a little bit worried about the middle of the pack, looking at your likes of Esteban Ocon, your Alex Albons, your Pierre Gasly's. If they were set up really dramatically towards wet weather conditions, and if the teams have gambled on the fact that there was a possibility of there being a wet weather race, it's just kind of dried up quite heavily over the course of the 24 hours since qualifying, and now looking like we are going to get a full dry weather race, maybe because they've edged towards it being a wet race, once it comes to actual Grand Prix, the guys behind them, your Strolls, your Hulkenbergs, your Magnusens, are actually going to be the drivers to launch themselves forwards and have that pace advantage going into it. So there's definitely a little bit of strategy at play here in terms of just how the cars have been set up for the weekend and what the teams can get away with manipulating. Obviously, they can put a little bit of front wing angle, change some bits and pieces here, but if they have decided to go with a full wet weather setup or a full dry weather setup, then we could end up with some really interesting battles, especially towards the midfield, in my opinion, here today. Obviously, Charles Leclerc starting on pole position. I also chucked over, oh, that is the radio messages. Also chucked over a community tab message, just, you know, Max fastest, Leclerc on pole. Feel like I've seen this before because, of course, Max Verstappen has been on pole 3 years in a row now. Obviously, he was fastest in 2022, 2023, and now 2024 when it came to qualifying, but has taken an engine penalty every single year here. So 2022, 2023, and now 2024 has taken a 5 or 10 place grid penalty. Last year it was only 5. He started in 6th place. Charles Leclerc was on pole. Max Verstappen still won the Grand Prix. This year made a little bit harder, first and foremost, because it's a 10 place grid drop. Max Verstappen starting from 11th place rather than 6th. Charles Leclerc once again on pole position because of that, but Max Verstappen with a lot more to do and also a lot more competitive cars in the way. You know, I'm looking at the likes of Carlos Sainz, I'm looking at George Russell, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton. They are going to be very difficult cars to pass this year, where last year Red Bull just had so much of an advantage that Max Verstappen effectively threw himself past them and disappeared into the distance. Also, I think it's quite interesting that they have shortened the DRS zone. So last year, the big thing for Red Bull was that they were so electric through the DRS points where they could catch up to the back of Formula One cars that they looked miles away from and then get them into the braking zones. They have shortened the DRS zone by 75 meters compared to last year. So that is also going to play against Max Verstappen, in my opinion. So Verstappen, starting in 11th place, he put in an incredible lap to get pole position yesterday and then dropped down to 10th place. He was 6 tenths up on everybody else, which is just absolutely obscene. But it does mean that Max Verstappen now has a lot to do this time around. But as I said, 2022, he took an engine penalty, he won the race. 2023, he took an engine penalty, he won the race. 2024, he's taken an engine penalty, he's started from 11th place instead of top spot. Will he win the race again? Will history continue to repeat itself for Max Verstappen? You guys over in the community tab had your say whether or not he would hold on, whether or not history would repeat itself. Kobe's gone for a Leclerc win, Leclerc pole position, Max Verstappen win. We've become accustomed to that over the last couple of seasons in Formula One, haven't we? Racing 1000 thinks that might happen again. Thinks Max Verstappen is a bit too far down the grid and has gone for a Lando Norris sneaking in to get the victory. Max or Sergio win, says the Iceman. A 1-2 is on the cards, but obviously Sergio Perez is in the mix there. Hasn't had the best sort of 7-8 races now. Definitely needs something to show that he is worthwhile staying in that seat over the summer break. Yuki Tsunoda wins, starting 77th from the grid. Of course, Yuki Tsunoda with that 60-place grid penalty. That's why he's at the back of the pack. It is weird, isn't it? You can take a 60-place grid penalty and start 20th. Actually, Yuki Tsunoda's only lost 3 places, even though he has taken a 60-place grid penalty for this Grand Prix. Michael says an RB1-2. Is that Red Bull? Is that, Max Verstappen 1, Sergio Perez 2? Or is that Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo 1-2? We will never know unless Michael is in the chat to let us know. Max is going into the race after not winning 3 races in a row. That's very true. It's not very Max Verstappen to go this long without a victory since 2022, is it? It's usually the race here or there. I think it's interesting, actually, that Max Verstappen hasn't started on pole position very much this season either, outside of the first 6 races. Or was he on pole in Imola? He was on pole in Imola as well. So the first 7 races, it was always kind of Max Verstappen on pole. Then it has been a bit of a mix. We've seen George Russell on pole. We've got Leclerc on pole today. We've seen Lando Norris on pole a couple of times. It has swapped between the drivers quite a bit throughout the season. Since Max Verstappen hasn't quite been that elite level above everybody else with the upgrades coming to the other cars. So going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Aeroplay was going for Lewis. If it rains, unfortunately, looking like it's going to be a dry race. Hope Sergio Perez wins. An explanation, please. Well, Harry Maguire, I did reply, so don't you worry. Got you sorted with an explanation on why history may repeat itself for the 3rd time, which is absolutely insane, isn't it? Piastri on the podium, Max to get a win. Perez crash, says Dark One Dia. Max Verstappen to DNF, says Ackle as well. Nobody wanted the Red Bulls to do very well this afternoon. I think it was... actually, just to quickly say, there was a little bit of fluid coming out of the back of Lewis Hamilton's car as he made his way round to the grid. It was interesting. Lando Norris was just behind him in the pit lane. And as the Mercedes car was kind of joining the track and heading up the hill, it was, I don't know what the fluid was, but it was coming off the back of that Mercedes car. Obviously, we saw George Russell have a reliability issue a couple of races ago in Silverstone, which took him out of the Grand Prix. I'm just hoping for Lewis Hamilton's sake that that isn't another problem that Mercedes are going to have and another reliability issue that might be the end of a Mercedes driver's race. The drivers are now joining at the front of the grid to stand for the national anthem, though. The cars are on the grid. Alex Albon and Logan Sargent running late. To be fair, they've got, you know, less distance to go than anybody else from the Williams garage, being right towards the front end of the grid. Max is going to get front wing damage. That is the only thing, isn't it? With Max Verstappen starting in 11th place, it is the trickiest place to start, you would say. You're right in the middle of the pack. You've got so much going on out in front of you. You've got so much going on behind you. Starting right in the middle, you know, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, I would say is the most difficult place to start in Formula One, just because you have so many different things to think about, whilst also trying to move forwards yourself. You know, you're trying to gain those places. You're trying to do it. You're trying to get involved in that first corner scrap so that you can maybe make up a couple of places yourself without then losing a front wing, hitting into somebody, getting a puncture somewhere along the line. Isn't that a 10 grid penalty? Yes. Why is Tsunoda 20th? Because he took a 60 place grid penalty. So yeah, should be starting 77th. Only 20 cars though, so starting in 20th place. Hamilton to win because 44 laps. Yeah, very good point. 44 laps, of course, the Belgian Grand Prix. Let's get the likes coming in. Thank you very much, Sally. And let's indeed get the likes coming in. We're about 10 minutes away from the start of the Belgian Grand Prix. And let's get the likes up. What are we in terms of likes so far on the stream? Haven't actually got my own stream up at this moment, so should probably check I'm even live. just hoping that you guys aren't discussing things in the chat with me not even here. No, we are live. We're definitely live. And we're set up and ready to go for the beginning of the Grand Prix weekend as well. If you haven't hit that like button, hit the like button. Completely free. Helps out everybody, and everyone here to gain more traction, get that higher viewership when it comes to these streams, and of course all of the videos as well. We've got 10 minutes, so you know, if you fancy watching a quick long form video, a few linked in the description down below for you, a few different genres that you could go through, or if you don't fancy, maybe just open one up, you know, leave a like on there, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Let's run down the 20 drivers then, something we haven't fully gone through as of yet. As I've mentioned a couple of times, Charles Leclerc starting from pole position, even though he was second fastest in qualifying yesterday. Max Verstappen taking that 10 place grid penalty, so we'll get to him a little further on down the grid. Charles Leclerc has actually started on pole position in all three of the last three Belgian Grand Prix. Has not won any of them, though. Max Verstappen has always taken the victory during this rules era. It does feel like Charles Leclerc and the Ferrari maybe just kind of got... I don't want to use the word lucky. I do want to say, like, Charles Leclerc put in a very, very good lap, but maybe a little bit lucky that it was intermediate tyre conditions. The fact that most teams may be setting themselves up for a drier race. It does feel like Leclerc is one of those drivers that can get the best out of those mixed conditions anyway. And we know that Charles Leclerc is one of the best qualifiers on the grid. But it did feel like a few things kind of rolled in his favor for him to put the Ferrari above where it maybe really is. I do think the Ferrari is still the fourth fastest car in Formula One right now. Unless this Belgian Grand Prix weekend, Ferrari have found the solution and they've finally made that Imola upgrade click. And actually, we're going to see Charles Leclerc run away with a victory at the top of the standings and maybe put Ferrari back into contention for wins, because it has felt like Mercedes and McLaren have really been the closest competitor. Of course, Sergio Perez starting in second place. We're used to seeing a Red Bull starting on the front row of the grid. It's not usually that Red Bull, though. The number 11 of Sergio Perez starting beside Charles Leclerc. And he was actually fairly happy on the radio. He was saying, well, you don't really want to start from pole position here in Spa, do you? And also the fact that he's in that Red Bull with the DRS advantage. I feel like he'll be looking at the back of Charles Leclerc's car and wanting to get that win under his belt. Of course, the only driver in the top 8 in the driver's standings who hasn't won a Grand Prix yet, Sergio Perez. And he doesn't want to go into the summer break being in 8th place in the driver's standings. He's dropped all the way to 7th spot in the driver's standings after what was a really solid start to the season. Hasn't taken very many points home in the last few Grand Prix, and that means that he is 7th. He does not want to drop to 8th, and he doesn't want to be the only driver in that top 8 to not take home a victory. Of course, Oscar Piastri taking home his first victory of the season and his Formula 1 career in Hungary means that everybody else in the top 8 has won a Grand Prix, apart from Sergio Perez, who wants to put that right. Lewis Hamilton starting in 3rd place, with Lando Norris starting in 4th, an all-British 2nd row of the grid. Hamilton wanted to get back up towards the podium places. Obviously managed to pick up a podium in Hungary, a victory in Silverstone. It's looked a lot better for Lewis Hamilton as the season has progressed. Kind of post-Canada, you would say the Mercedes car has looked very, very competitive. Same with Lando Norris. He probably thinks he should have more than one win in the bag. Contentious that he didn't get the win last time out in Hungary, but let's face it, it's been McLaren's fault that they haven't picked up more victories this season. The fact that Max Verstappen isn't in and around him, Max Verstappen is starting 7 places behind Lando Norris. He should be the #1 driver, really, if you're looking at form this season as to who should pick up the victory here this afternoon. But starting just outside the podium places, his teammate, though, Oscar Piastri, has looked very, very quick here this weekend. Was very impressed with Oscar Piastri during qualifying yesterday. Thought he put in a really good performance. Got to remember, he is still young in his Formula 1 career. Hasn't had many races where he's had those mixed intermediate conditions to contend with. A 5th place start for him would be very exciting to see what he can do from there. 6th place for George Russell. He was a little bit frustrated with 6th place. I think he felt like he had a little bit more in the car. A 6th place finish nonetheless for George Russell does put him in a nice position to move forwards in the Grand Prix. You could say the same for Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz kind of found himself in a little bit of a no man's land in the last couple of Grand Prix weekends, in my opinion. Hasn't been battling much with anybody. Not necessarily underperforming, but not overperforming either. And of course, still looking to get himself a slot on the grid for the 2025 season. Will it be Williams? Will it be Alpine? We're still yet to know. Fernando Alonso, though, starting in 8th place, making an all-Spanish 4th row of the grid. Fernando Alonso much happier with the Aston Martin car. The development cycle of the Aston Martin repeating itself from last year, not going incredibly well so far this season, but they seem to have finally found a little bit of a solution. You know, you look at him comfortably finishing in the points for the first 6 races of the season, then really fell off a cliff. There was a 19th place finish, a 17th place finish for Fernando Alonso in recent weekends. Back up into the point scoring places and should score points here this weekend in Belgium if everything goes right for Alonso. Ocon in 9th place, a nice thing to see for Alpine. They finally reduced the weight of that Alpine car and are starting to pick up points more consistently. It's usually been Pierre Gasly that was picking up the points. Obviously, he had 4 races in a row where he picked up points consistently. Then 2 DNFs for Pierre Gasly. So it's been up and down for Alpine over the course of the season so far. Ocon starts in 9th place. It looks the best option for them to pick up points this weekend, with Alex Albon starting in 10th. Of course, 2 9th place finishes, the only points that Albon has picked up so far this season. Starting from 10th, we'll be looking to round out the first half of the season with a bit of positivity, because the year started really tricky for Alex Albon and the Williams team, didn't it? A lot of crashes towards the beginning of the season, a lot of things going wrong at the factory. Now we're finally back into it, and hopefully Alex Albon can end on a little bit of a high as we go into the August break. Max Verstappen, as I said, even though he was fastest yesterday, starting from 11th place, a lot for him to do, but that Red Bull looking more and more quick, isn't it? They brought that big upgrade package to Hungary. Didn't look like it was 100% settled on the car. A week later in Belgium, though, 6/10ths quicker in qualifying. Maybe we are looking at Max Verstappen taking that step away from the rest of the pack once again and looking like he is going to be that dominant force in Formula 1 like he was for the past couple of seasons. Gasly starts beside him in 12th place. Obviously, his ex-teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, the man who wants to be his teammate, 13th place for him. Valtteri Bottas in 14th. Lance Stroll 15th. Nico Hulkenberg 16th place. Kevin Magnussen starts at 17th, 18th for Logan Sargent, 19th for Zhou Guanyu, and after that 60-place grid penalty, Yuki Tsunoda starts at the back of the pack. Woo! We got it done. We're 3 minutes away from the start of the Belgian Grand Prix. Oh my God, Sally, thank you so much. Just a small thank you for covering the first half of the season. You really do not have to. I absolutely love spending the Grand Prix weekends with all of you guys. Sally, an absolute OG of the channel, was here. You must have been here in the first, 1,000 subscribers, it feels like. You've been here for a very, very long time. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so, so much, Sally. Much appreciated. Who's my favorite driver? Although I am wearing a Mercedes t-shirt, I am a McLaren fan. Unfortunately, all of my McLaren merchandise in the wash. So apart from a jumper, and it's absolutely boiling here in the UK right now, or at least in Norwich, very, very hot today. So the jumper was not an option, unfortunately. Need to get myself some more McLaren merch is effectively what I've realized over the course of the first half of the season. Dice, hello. Kiefer in there as well. How are we all doing? Are we ready to go? Shall we get ourselves set up for the Belgian Grand Prix? Get a couple of bits loaded up for ourselves. If you haven't hit that like button, make sure you hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel as well if you are new. Of course, the summer break coming up, 4 weeks without a Formula One Grand Prix weekend, but we will be live for all 10 of the 2024 races yet to come, starting in 4 weeks' time in Zandvoort, I want to say. Off the top of my head, we will be live for that. We're live for every single qualifying, sprint race, and the Grand Prix themselves, like we are this weekend. Goodness gracious me. I'm going to yawn if Verstappen is leading the race. Sally is the GOAT. Correct, Lofi. That is very, very true. What Olympic sport am I looking forward to? Oh, that is a great question. I haven't watched any of the Olympics so far, which is a pretty poor showing, isn't it? I know it started on Friday. I feel like I'll watch more of the Olympics when the Formula One isn't on. Like when Formula One is on and the season is fully in the swing, I am very much head down, focused on Formula One for that time. The summer break is almost a little summer break for myself, as well as the Formula One teams on the grid. Goodness me. Super excited for the race. And the collab with Mr. Pulse F1 later. Yes, that is very, very true. Thank you. Racing is epic. Of course, we are live before we think about post-summer break. We're live once again this evening, joined by Mr. Pulse to talk everything that is going to happen in the next 2 hours of Formula One racing. We'll get his hot takes on the first half of the Formula One season and see how he is feeling heading into the summer break and whether or not he thinks there's any opportunity for some switches to happen in the championships. Of course, Max Verstappen leading the way still. Lando Norris in second place, but by a considerable margin. It's a lot to do with 11 races left to go if Lando Norris is going to get himself within touching distance of a championship battle. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. This is what I mean. It feels doom and gloom for Ferrari considering how they started the season, but they are still running third and fourth in the Drivers' Championship. Oscar Piastri after his first win in fifth now. Lewis Hamilton then slightly adrift in sixth place. Sergio Perez splits the Mercedes in seventh. George Russell in eighth. Fairly obviously, the Aston Martin's fifth fastest so far this season. They've upped and downed throughout the year, but fifth fastest overall on average, and ninth and 10th place with Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll on about half the points of his teammate. Nico Hülkenberg and Yuki Tsunoda fighting to be the best of the midfield in 11th and 12th, both on 22 points. Daniel Ricciardo, then their closest competitor in the other RB, with 13 points. Ollie Behrman still has 6 points from his outing in Saudi Arabia for the Ferrari team. Pierre Gasly, 6 points as well now for the Alpine after those 4 points finishes in a row before his 2 DNFs that he's had in the past couple of race weekends. Kevin Magnussen, 5 points for Haas. Alex Albon, those 2 ninth place finishes equals 4 points. Esteban Ocon with 3 on the board so far this season. Starting in ninth today, maybe can add to those. Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, Valtteri Bottas at the back of the standings, still yet to score a point. Whew. Here we go then. Let's get it loaded up. We've got the cars on their formation laps. we're looking at tyre strategies and what is to come here in Belgium. Lots of cars starting on the medium compound tyre, as you can see. Carlos Sainz going against the grain, starting on the harder compound tyre. Of course, a lot of slick tyres available to the teams because intermediate tyres were used in qualifying yesterday. So basically a free reign of fresh tyres today. So it'll be interesting to see what strategy choices are made by the teams because they can do effectively whatever they would like. Daniel Ricciardo also going against it, but going the other way, starting on the soft compound tyre in 13th place, maybe trying to just make up a few positions early on in the Grand Prix and hope that the undercut is not the way forward for the guys today. Zhou Guanyu also starting on the hard compound tyre in 19th. As you can see, everybody else fresh sets of medium compound tyres as we make our way around the formation lap. It's a longer formation lap, of course, nearly 2 minutes, well, over 2 minutes around here in Spa. The longest track on the Formula One calendar, only 44 laps to be completed, but it's 44 laps that are very high speed, very tricky, and will see the best of these drivers come out. New Video Studios. What is he even saying? Oh, do I have a favorite Formula One driver that is not currently on the grid right now? Yes, Jenson Button. There you go. I got you covered. Carlos Sainz starting on hard. Maybe his plan is to be able to pit for softs, go for the fastest lap. That is a good shout. Also feels like there is a bit of a mix. I feel like we could see some drivers go for a one-stop. Could see some drivers go for a two-stop. It's a bit similar to Hungary in the fact that you could make either of those work. The one-stop is going to be a little bit harder. Like we saw Yuki Tsunoda make the one-stop work in Hungary last time out and score points. I think it could be similar today. We'll see a few cars try and go that little bit longer, try and go for that one-stop strategy, see if they can make up the 20 seconds or so. Of course, a safety car or a red flag could completely change what the strategy positions are. So we'll see as it develops. We'll kind of keep you updated to who is moving in what direction with that. I'll make sure I've got the telemetries up. In fact, have I got the race trace ready? Yeah, it's just awaiting race trace data because we have not yet started the Grand Prix, but I'll keep you up to date with all of the goings on in terms of strategy. Here is Yuki Tsunoda coming around towards the bus stop. He's going to be the last man to join the back of the pack. Of course, we are going to get the go-ahead to go racing. Zhou Guanyu has made his way around turn 19 here at the Belgian Grand Prix. Yuki Tsunoda, as I say, just taking his slot at the back of the pack. The medical car joining them on the grid. The green flag is waved. 5 red lights, and we're going to get underway here in Spa. Can Charles Leclerc hold on to pole position? He goes across to cover Perez. Perez, it's a slow start. Lewis Hamilton is actually going to get up the inside of the Red Bull car going into turn 1. Maybe a little touch between the two of them. I think it's Oscar Piastri's forced wide. No, it's not. It's Lando Norris onto the gravel. He's dropped back a couple of positions. Lando Norris is fallen backwards about 3 places. Through Radion they go. It's Leclerc from Hamilton and Perez so far. Oscar Piastri is up into 4th place as well. But this is where the first real hard braking zone is going to be. Sergio Perez looking for an opening. It's not there. There's a little touch between Piastri and Russell. Russell backs out of it. And Piastri keeps the place in 4th. Carlos Sainz is up into 6th place after Lando Norris falling back. Fernando Alonso up into 8th place ahead of Alex Albon. Max Verstappen has only been able to get up into 10th, with Esteban Ocon dropping out of the point scoring places. Albon holding onto it in 9th place, with the Red Bull right behind him under pressure now in the Williams car. In fact, we're a little bit behind in terms of the telemetry. I'm just going to reset that for a second as we get set up for the second lap. It's probably going to freeze for a second just while I get that reset for you. In fact, let's see what the radio is saying whilst I just reset that, because it's a little bit delayed on where I would like it to be. Charles Leclerc leads then. Lewis Hamilton has taken second. Sergio Perez in third as we get towards the end of the first lap. Charles Leclerc trying to do his best to get outside of DRS range. Of course, DRS is a big factor here in Belgium. And Max Verstappen's going to try and go around the outside of Alex Albon into the bus stop, and does. Max Verstappen, not the most common overtaking place for Max Verstappen there into turn 18 at the bus stop chicane, but takes the position from Alex Albon. Side by side is Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda right now. Oh, sorry, Daniel Ricciardo, that is, in the 14th place ahead of Lance Stroll. Let's get the track map back going for you. If you could hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. That is now reset with Charles Leclerc under pressure. Lewis Hamilton with DRS. Lando Norris trying to get past Carlos Sainz, but isn't able to get past the Ferrari. Still remains in 7th spot. And Lando Norris, after being my favourite to win this Grand Prix from the position he was starting in, now finds himself under threat from that man he has very much been wary of over the last few races since Austria. Max Verstappen now right behind the big boys, and the top 8, the top 4 teams making their way up there. Max Verstappen 8th place already, making very quick work of Albon, Ocon and Alonso. Here we go then. Charles Leclerc still within DRS range of Lewis Hamilton. Sergio Perez just behind, still with DRS as well. Piastri 4th, Russell 5th, Carlos Sainz 6th, Lando Norris 7th, Max Verstappen now into the top 8. Fernando Alonso remaining in the points, with Alex Albon the final point scoring place behind in 10th. Ocon and Gasly have met themselves, the teammates have met in 11th and 12th place. And Valtteri Bottas in 13th. Daniel Ricciardo on the soft compound tyre still running around in 14th. Alex Albon is under investigation for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. See how that plays out. Lance Stroll in 15th. Hülkenberg and Magnussen still 16th. I was expecting a little bit more from the Hasses, if I'm honest. Here we go then. Lewis Hamilton is going to try and make a move on Charles Leclerc. The DRS wide open as they come up the hill down towards turn 5. And Lewis Hamilton is going to take the lead of the Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc a sitting duck to Lewis Hamilton as he takes the race lead ahead of the Ferrari. The problem he's now going to have is getting outside of DRS range himself. Max Verstappen, the fastest man out on track right now with a 1:49.8, the fastest lap of the race so far. And that's putting Lando Norris under pressure. In fact, Lando Norris really under pressure from Max Verstappen. That Red Bull looking incredibly racy this weekend here in Belgium. George Russell also trying to get past Oscar Piastri. Has a little look for the Australian, doing enough to put in the defensive maneuvers required. This is going to be very interesting because we have got the top 8 running as the front 8. Oh! And we have a very slow-moving Zhou Guanyu. You can see he started 19th. He's just coming around towards turn 10 on the graphic. Zhou Guanyu losing power. This might be our first DNF of the race. I think Zhou Guanyu's going to try his best to get it back towards the pits, but with Spa being such a long track, the longest track on the Formula 1 calendar, he's got a long way to go to get it back to the pit lane. And in fact, going to have to be worried about getting in the way of the likes of Lewis Hamilton, who's just set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far and gotten himself outside of DRS range of Charles Leclerc. So the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton looking very good indeed. Sergio Perez still in 3rd place behind the 2. Piastri 4th, Russell 5th, Carlos Sainz 6th, Lando Norris and Max Verstappen having a little battle as they go down towards turn 5. Hamilton holds on to the lead. And everybody slots into position. Nobody in the top 8 making a move this time around. But yeah, Joe DNF on the cards, still running incredibly slowly round in 20th place. You can see Zhou Guanyu just coming around turn 15 towards 16 on the graphic that you have got. Still moving, still going, but some kind of engine issue, maybe a gearbox issue where he's just got no power to actually put into the car and isn't able to shift up in any way. Maybe they find a little default. Maybe they can get him back into the pits, get him back going again. Oh, no. In fact, he's not coming into the pits. Zhou Guanyu seemingly managed to sort out that power issue out on track. He didn't come into the pit lane, and Zhou Guanyu has continued around turn 1. He is now nearly a minute, over a minute, behind the top runners. In fact, he's a minute and 8 seconds off Lewis Hamilton in terms of the gap to the lead. So a long way to come back for Zhou Guanyu, but a red flag or a safety car could put him back into contention, especially if he does really hold on to those hard compound tyres now. It's going to be all about holding on to the tyres for Zhou Guanyu in 20th place. Needs something to go wrong for somebody else, though, for him to really get back into this race and be within touching distance of anybody. All 19th cars miles up the road from him. Now looking at Max Verstappen's onboard behind Lando Norris. Not close enough, even with DRS, to have a go. Here's Oscar Piastri having a look at Sergio Perez. And Piastri wanting to get up into the podium places. Sergio Perez under pressure from the young Australian. Of course, now Grand Prix winner after the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. Lando Norris still under pressure from Verstappen and still holds on to 7th place. It's a replay of the start here. Sergio Perez slow off the line, tries to cover Lewis Hamilton, but Hamilton able to get up into 2nd place as they go up the hill. Lando Norris was forced wide into the gravel. That's what cost Lando Norris those 3 or 4 positions. I think it was actually Oscar Piastri who forced his teammate off the track, or possibly Lando Norris just going a little bit too deep through turn 1. Not sure from that camera angle there on board with Charles Leclerc, but Lewis Hamilton getting ahead at the start. Carlos Sainz just trying to fend off Fernando Alonso, does well, the Spaniard, and also then gains that position, gets in front of Lando Norris. Lando Norris actually cuts in front of Fernando Alonso. That's what cost Fernando to Alex Albon, who's managed to get ahead, but Fernando then has taken that position back. Here we are then back live. Zhou Guanyu. Best option is to retire. I think he'll hold out for a bit just in case there is a safety car or a red flag. But yeah, it's not looking like Zhou Guanyu is going to be able to get anywhere close to the top runners. Just if nothing happens effectively. Oscar Piastri once again has a look at Sergio Perez. Not able to do it this time around, though. Sergio Perez a little bit more wily to the fact that the Australian is trying to have a go at the back of him. Lewis Hamilton has actually got himself outside of DRS range. No DRS for Sergio Perez is probably why Oscar Piastri has been able to close that gap so well. Hamilton on the radio. Something is moving down by my legs. Not good for Lewis Hamilton, is it? I did mention Lewis Hamilton had that issue as they were coming around to actually come onto the grid. There was a lot of liquid pouring out of the back of the Mercedes car and flicking up in front of the rear camera that they have mounted on all of the Formula One cars. Just hope that Lewis Hamilton hasn't got a reliability issue similar to what we saw with George Russell a couple of races ago in Silverstone that took George Russell out of the running there. But Hamilton now 1.2 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Leclerc is able to close the gap through the middle sector, then loses out to Lewis Hamilton on the straights, which is unlike Ferrari. Sergio Perez has moved to nearly 2 seconds behind Leclerc. Oscar Piastri is the driver with DRS inside the top 4. George Russell then is a second off the back of Piastri. That gives Carlos Sainz the DRS advantage. And there is Zhou Guanyu coming into the pits. And yeah, whoever said Zhou Guanyu best to come in and deal with just going home early. They've decided to do that down at Stake Sauber. It's the end of the start of the season for him. No points on the board for Stake Sauber so far this season, and that will remain the case for Zhou Guanyu. Valtteri Bottas running in 13th place. Just needs a couple of drivers to have an incident towards the front. Very much in contention for a point-scoring place. Is currently all over the back of Pierre Gasly in the Stake Sauber car. And the Alpine not looking as racy as it maybe was in qualifying yesterday. Possibly slightly more wet weather setup on that Alpine car for this weekend. Ocon and Gasly running 11th and 12th, but under pressure from the cars behind. In fact, quite a bit of a train behind Fernando Alonso. You can see the separation between the clear top 4 teams and the rest of the grid right now. You can see those 4 teams just disappearing. That top 8 stretching the lead away from Fernando Alonso. Nearly 3 seconds the gap between Verstappen in 8th, Fernando Alonso in 9th. Then Albon a second or so behind Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, Ricciardo, Stroll, all with DRS in a train behind Fernando Alonso and Alex Albon right now. And looking to get into those point-scoring places. Looks like only two point-scoring places are going to be available, doesn't it? 9th and 10th place. The top 8 really clearly defining themselves as the fastest 4 teams right now. There is Zhou Guanyu out of the car and retired after just 5 laps of racing here at the Belgian Grand Prix. Not the way he would have wanted to end the season. Lewis Hamilton, though, stretching his lead 1.7 seconds now. The gap, Perez 1.6 ahead as well. Oh, and an early pit stop for Nico Hülkenberg. Maybe just trying to go for something similar to what they did last time around. Oh, where they went for a maneuver early. Decided to try and get that position done. And the undercut trying to go in Nico Hülkenberg's favour. He's going to have a lot of track to run into. You can see him just coming up the hill towards turn 5. We'll keep an eye on Nico Hülkenberg's pace on the hard compound tyre. Only 7 laps completed on his set of medium tyres at the beginning of the Grand Prix, but he can make up that time. Zhou Guanyu had an engine problem, unfortunately. Lost power and was running very, very slowly. Managed to seemingly fix it out on track, but possibly not able to really get the performance that they wanted back in the car, and deciding actually we'll hold on to that power unit rather than putting it through 40 laps of pretty hard race running. And maybe we're able to fix it rather than causing more damage to the power unit in the back of that Stake Sauber car. Here's an onboard with George Russell. What's going on inside the Mercedes? Ooh, very wide from George Russell. Down towards turn 8, that is. And Carlos Sainz looking a lot faster than the Mercedes. And now here come the teams covering off Nico Hülkenberg. Albon pits, Ricciardo pits, Sargent pits as well in the Williams. Everyone worried that Nico Hülkenberg is going to have that pace on the hard compound tyre. Hülkenberg back ahead of Logan Sargent as he was before. A couple of seconds back from Daniel Ricciardo. Piastri. Plan A or Plan B? Oscar Piastri wanting to decide on what's going to happen between this phase of the race. Does he want to hold on to the tyres a little bit longer, or does he want to just burn through those mediums and come in before the rest of the pack? He's gone for Plan A. Of course, we don't, as people watching, we don't know what that is. They don't want to give away too much because all of the other teams are also listening to the radios of the drivers. I think that would be an interesting job if you're working for one of the Formula One teams. There is somebody's job at like Mercedes, for instance, to just listen to all of the McLaren radio communications and feed back what they are doing. That'd be quite an interesting job over the course of a Grand Prix weekend. We're just on the radio listening to what everyone else is doing. Lewis Hamilton, though, as we enter lap 10 of this Grand Prix, is still leading. Tyres are still okay. Rears are definitely dropping. The radio message from Lewis Hamilton. He is elongating his lead nonetheless. 2 seconds now the gap to Charles Leclerc behind. Sergio Perez, 2.3 seconds off that. Oscar Piastri then a second and a half. Russell a second. Carlos Sainz, the only driver in the top 6 with DRS. Lando Norris also with DRS behind the Ferrari. And Max Verstappen with DRS in the top 8. Then a nearly 5-second gap to Fernando Alonso as we see Pierre Gasly come into the pits as well. He's going to drop in behind Albon. Ricciardo, is he going to get ahead of Hülkenberg? Yes. Ooh, no, maybe not. It's going to be close between Hülkenberg and Gasly. Going to come out of the pits side by side. And he has just about gotten out. So Gasly ahead. Daniel Ricciardo, though, has been able to get in front of Pierre Gasly and undercut the Alpine. He's now running behind Alex Albon. Remember, Alex Albon effectively running 10th place because he was behind Fernando Alonso, but has now pitted. So it's Ocon, Bottas, Stroll, Magnussen, Tsunoda, the guys in front that have yet to have pitted in that midfield battle. Of course, Fernando Alonso yet to have pitted as well. The top 8 drivers all very tightly packed still. About 10 seconds between Hamilton and Verstappen at this point in the Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso is the real jump in pace between 8th and 9th place, a nearly 5-second gap to the Spaniard from the championship leading Dutchman. Of course, that 10th-place penalty has put Max Verstappen at the back of this, and Verstappen deciding to go early. Box for Max Verstappen as they come around the bus stop chicane. He peels off into the pits, and actually so does George Russell. So we'll see here what the pace is like for George Russell and Max Verstappen. Is the hard compound tyre for both. And Russell, a good pit stop, a 2.3 for him. Verstappen, a 2.7. We're going to see those two come out side by side. We'll see where in the traffic they're going to be. I think that's the other thing for these two. They don't want to be stuck behind an RB, which is exactly where George Russell has come out. George Russell is right behind Yuki Tsunoda, who is yet to have pitted, needs to dispatch the RB of the Japanese driver as quickly as he possibly can. Get those hard compound tyres up to temperature, up towards turn 5. DRS wide open. Here goes George Russell. This is for position and up into 12th place. And needs to get going quick. He's going to try and undercut the other drivers that were running inside the top 8 as well. Now the front runners need to decide what they're going to do. Is Lewis Hamilton going to cover off, come into the pits himself? Leclerc, Perez, Piastri, Sainz, Norris, the top 6 now, all interesting. Trying to gain an advantage on one another. Nico Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly having a little battle, and Hülkenberg coming out on top of it this time around. Remains 17th place. Hamilton box. So Hamilton is looking to cover off the moves of Russell and Verstappen. We are right in the middle of that pit window. Oscar Piastri is also going to come in as well. Alan McLaren's going to try and double stack. Or is that going to be... So Piastri in, Hamilton in, Perez in as well. Leclerc, Sainz and Norris continue. Obviously, it makes sense for Carlos Sainz continues on the hard compound tyre. But Leclerc on the medium, Norris on the medium as well. See what kind of pace they have got. And Lewis Hamilton now coming out of the pits. And Lewis Hamilton ahead of Stroll. Sergio Perez is going to come out still ahead of George Russell. But Russell, I think, is going to get the jump on Piastri. And Russell is now ahead of Oscar Piastri. The McLaren dropping behind the Mercedes-powered car. So there is the position gained for George Russell in the pit stops. Max Verstappen, surprisingly, all the way back in 12th place, still trying to get past Kevin Magnussen. But Piastri's going to come back at him, and Piastri's going to try and make the move, and Piastri up into 9th place ahead of George Russell. That's the move we want. Come on, the McLaren boys. Sergio Perez remains in 8th place ahead of Piastri, though. And George Russell running behind the Australian once again. Max Verstappen has dispatched Kevin Magnussen and is now trying to catch up to the back of George Russell. Be interesting to see what kind of radio messages are going backwards and forwards between Verstappen and GP. Obviously, the war between them in Hungary. Charles Leclerc saying, if we're going to get undercut, let's just go long. So Charles Leclerc, Ferrari have decided to go for a completely different strategy for the to the rest of those running. Maybe Lando Norris following in his footsteps. No, Charles Leclerc comes into the pits. Leclerc is in. Carlos Sainz then is going to be the leader of this Grand Prix. Is Lando Norris going to follow into the pits? No. Lando Norris stays out on the medium tyre. Lando Norris is going to move up into second spot. Here's going to be the interesting part. Where is Charles Leclerc going to come out in all of this? I think that is Lance Stroll coming into the pits for Aston Martin. There goes Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. And I think Charles Leclerc is going to remain ahead of Perez. He is. Charles Leclerc still ahead of Sergio Perez. So Hamilton, Leclerc, Perez remaining in that kind of 1-2-3 formation with Sainz, Norris and Alonso ahead who have yet to have stopped. Piastri remains behind. Russell then in 8th spot. Here's Max Verstappen looking at the back. Oh, and Oscar Piastri is going to try and have a go at Sergio Perez. And he's going to have a go at Sergio Perez. And Piastri up into, effectively, the podium places. Piastri up into 6th. Behind Hamilton, our race leader, and Charles Leclerc in 2nd. Of course, Carlos Sainz ahead on the road right now, but yet to have stopped. We've got Sainz, Norris, Alonso, Magnussen, and Tsunoda, who have still yet to come into the pits. 5 drivers still left to come in this first phase. Of course, Carlos Sainz started on the hard compound tyre, so might go a little bit longer than the rest by a considerable margin. Interesting that Norris and Alonso started on the medium and are going long. Magnussen and Tsunoda also started on the medium compound tyre, so wasn't expecting them to go as long as maybe they have. Max Verstappen actually making him work for the overtake was Yuki Tsunoda. And Verstappen, a replay of that overtake on Yuki Tsunoda. It was a good move from Verstappen, but Tsunoda most certainly didn't let the main Red Bull team driver past. Alonso pits then. That puts Hamilton up into 3rd once again. The fastest lap of the Grand Prix from Oscar Piastri as he comes across the start-finish line. And Fernando Alonso is going to fall backwards. Is Fernando Alonso still going to get out in front of Kevin Magnussen? I don't think so. Kevin Magnussen now coming around turn 1. Fernando Alonso has lost out massively there. Was running in the points, remember. Fernando Alonso comfortably in 9th place behind Verstappen. Magnussen is now the driver up into the point scoring places. Still yet to have pitted. Albon up into 11th. It's Daniel Ricciardo, the real winner here. Daniel Ricciardo up ahead of Fernando Alonso and into 12th place in the RB. Albon and Ricciardo have been able to get the jump on Alonso, and so has Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg and Alonso going for it side by side. No, Alonso holds on to that position. I thought Hülkenberg was going to get the jump on Alonso there as well. But Alonso holding on to the position just about. So we do have Lando Norris on the radio. 100% pace, he is told. 100% pace. And we're looking at Lando Norris, a 149.9 last time around, to Oscar Piastri, a 147.5. So a lot of pace required if Lando Norris is going to start matching the guys behind and able to get back into contention. Carlos Sainz running in first place on the hard compound tyre, doing his job. And let's see, where's 20 seconds from the lead? Still, yeah. So Carlos Sainz now effectively running behind Verstappen, really. Because he has got a pit at some point and will lose 20 seconds unless Carlos Sainz is going to go for the one-stop strategy to everybody else's two-stop strategy, which will gain him back that 20 seconds in terms of pit time. It's just whether he can hold on to that 20 seconds worth of lap time as well. A 149 dead from Carlos Sainz, a 149.5 from Lando Norris, 148.1 from Hamilton, The 48.2 from Leclerc, the 48 lap times coming in. Lance Stroll complaining of the straight line speed of the Aston Martin. Here's Alex Albon making a move on Yuki Tsunoda. Is he going to get past Yuki Tsunoda? Yes. Yuki Tsunoda down into 11th place. Albon back up into the point scoring places in 10th. Kevin Magnussen, of course, yet to have pitted, as well as Yuki Tsunoda as well. So Alex Albon effectively running best of the rest right now in the Williams car. Is another 9th place finish on the cards. Oh, it's a yellow flag in the third sector. What's happened? Not sure. Was only Carlos Sainz in the final sector there. Maybe a little mistake from Carlos Sainz. I think so, actually, because Lando Norris has gained quite a lot of lap time on Carlos Sainz there. Was there a mistake from the Spaniard? Lewis Hamilton running in third place, effectively the lead, though, remember, as Lando Norris is now going to have to box on the medium tyre. 14 laps completed on them. And I think he's going to come out behind Max Verstappen here by quite some distance. Lando Norris having to go for a completely different strategy, you would imagine, for the rest of the race. Hard compound tyres onto the McLaren car of Lando Norris. It's looking like he was properly in contention to win this Grand Prix. When you were looking at the starting grid, started in 4th place, Lando is now going to be miles adrift of the top 7 drivers. And although, yes, he is still running in the top 8, it's going to be quite far off. Where is he? Nearly 6 seconds off Verstappen. McLaren, what are you doing? Oscar Piastri is running in the podium places, and Lando Norris has been thrown to the slaughter. 6 seconds off the back of Verstappen. They're going to have to do something ridiculous in terms of their strategy choices to try and make up that position and that pace. Oh, here is the replay of the Carlos Sainz mistake. As I said, there must have been one, and there was indeed. Onto the gravel as well, the Spaniard. Oh, a real mistake from Carlos Sainz going through turn 12 and turn 13. Oh, goodness gracious me. Oh, no, sorry, it was down in 14. Carlos Sainz onto the gravel. Ooh, it's not going to help his tyre degradation and tyre management, is it? He's now 6 seconds up the road from Lewis Hamilton. But, of course, as I said, yet to have stopped. Esteban Ocon is making his way past Nico Hülkenberg and up into 13th place with the Deadpool helmet he is wearing for this weekend. Kevin Magnussen still yet to have stopped in the Haas. I think Yuki Tsunoda has finally succumbed and come into the pits. He has indeed, yeah, and Yuki Tsunoda now running at the back of the pack once again. So I think it is just Carlos Sainz and Kevin Magnussen. Yep, Carlos Sainz and Kevin Magnussen, the 2 drivers we are waiting to pit, and then we have got a full rundown of where everybody really is running. Fernando Alonso has been a big loser in that. He's dropped behind Albon and Ricciardo. That's put the Williams and the RB up into the point scoring places. Fernando Alonso effectively running 11th on the road. The other big loser, Lando Norris, has dropped behind Max Verstappen by a considerable margin, 5 seconds off the back. Max Verstappen is given the go-ahead. I think we should try and get them. What do you think? And GP, thumbs up for Max Verstappen. Let's see what the Red Bull driver can do. Can he get past George Russell? Can Sergio Perez give him a little bit of a hand by escaping outside of DRS range? Russell 0.9 behind Sergio Perez. So if the Mexican can just push that a little bit harder, maybe it'll open the door to Max Verstappen to get in front of the Mercedes. 1,200 people watching right now live. If you haven't hit that like button, it's completely free. Hit the like button if you're enjoying this stream. Also, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 100,000 subscribers. We want to get there before the end of the season. Of course, the summer break on the horizon. We are just 7,000 subscribers away from picking up that silver play button. Wouldn't it just look lovely in this spot here? Imagine my hands where they are. Instead of empty wall, a silver play button illuminated in orange. McLaren, please fire your strategist. I hope McLaren's strategy works. It's not looking like the best of strategies right now. It's going to be an interesting watch. Here we go then. Kevin Magnussen finally comes into the pits. So it leaves just Carlos Sainz out on the hard compound tyre. And there is Alex Albon up into 9th place, as I said before, and Daniel Ricciardo up into the points scoring places. George Russell trying his best to hold on to the back of Sergio Perez to not allow Verstappen the benefit of DRS advantage. Here's a replay of Pierre Gasly. Imagine making his way past Nico Hülkenberg and does it down into turn 18. Gets on the brakes early and gets in very, very nicely done from Pierre Gasly up into 13th place with his Wolverine helmet. Of course, the Alpines looked really quick in qualifying yesterday. Whether they would just set up for the wetter weather conditions, because as it seemed to dry, they did seem to lose out on a little bit of that pace advantage that they had. They are running in 12th and 13th. It's not over yet for the Alpine cars, and the possibility of a point scoring place on offer, especially because we know the top 8 drivers this season haven't been without incident. There's been a few collisions. I'm thinking Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri in Miami. Thinking Max Verstappen and Lando Norris in Austria. Thinking Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton in Hungary. There's been a few comings together with these top 8 drivers so far this season. Nothing is out of the question right now. Carlos Sainz on the radio. Ooh. And Carlos Sainz. Plan B. Looking like the mediums won't go as long as they were hoping it was able to. Carlos Sainz saying, you know, let me do a couple more laps. He is losing lap time to the front runners, but I think hoping to do a one-stop strategy. And not sure if the one-stop is really going to roll into it. I know I said that at the beginning of the Grand Prix. The one-stop was a possibility. It was going to be a difficult one to make work. Maybe it isn't actually an option this weekend here in Belgium. Lando Norris has set the fastest lap of the race so far. Is closing into Max Verstappen, of course. Remember, was 6 seconds off the back of the Red Bull. Now 3.5. So is gaining, not necessarily getting himself into the position where he would have wanted to be after starting in 4th place. He is still running at the back of this top group. Of course, once Carlos Sainz does pit, he will be behind Lando Norris. And by, again, a considerable margin. You're looking at Carlos Sainz probably being 7 or 8 seconds off the back of Lando Norris as we move into this second phase of the Grand Prix. Alex Albon is 14 seconds off the back of Lando Norris right now. Just again, reiterating that point between the top 4 teams and the rest of the grid. There is a real gap in quality between those positions, but Alex Albon nonetheless running in the point scoring places. He'll be very happy with another 9th place finish. That'll be 3 9th place finishes in 14 races for Alex Albon if he can make it happen. Put him on 6 points for the season. Daniel Ricciardo also looking to score another point for the RB team in their battle to remain dominant over Haas in the midfield and try and close in to Aston Martin in the constructors' standings. Also, Daniel Ricciardo wanting to gain on Hülkenberg and Tsunoda in the driver's standings. He is 11 points adrift. Could make that 10 with a 10th place finish here this weekend. And in fact, he is gaining on Alex Albon. So 9th and 10th place very much up for grabs right now. Looking once again at the back of Max Verstappen, who just still hasn't been able to really close in and have a look at George Russell. And that's mainly because George Russell still has the DRS. George Russell doing everything he can to hold on to the back of Sergio Perez here. Carlos Sainz, a box. So we are going to see the full race order. Carlos Sainz is going to drop back to 8th place, and Lewis Hamilton is going to take his rightful place as a leader of the Grand Prix. Oh, Esteban Ocon has gone for an overtake on Fernando Alonso. The old Alpine teammates And Fernando Alonso, it is that straight line speed, as Lance Stroll said on the radio of the Aston Martin, that is just looking absolutely nowhere right now. And Fernando Alonso has dropped back once more. Of course, started in the point scoring places, did Fernando Alonso, has fallen away and now is behind Esteban Ocon and in 12th place. Esteban Ocon looking to get up into the point scoring places where he started as well. Carlos Sainz is in and out. Hamilton, Leclerc, Piastri, Perez, Russell, Verstappen, and Lando Norris make their way past the Ferrari. The only sort of benefit here is Carlos Sainz is going to come out in a wonderful bit of free air. Got a real gap to Alex Albon behind and a lot of tarmac to run into. In fact, Sergio Perez is now under pressure from George Russell, and we were talking about Max Verstappen having a go at George Russell. Well, how about George Russell having a go at Sergio Perez? He gets in front of the Mexican and up into 4th place. And I think Red Bull are going to let Verstappen past here. And they're going to let Max Verstappen have a go at George Russell, because Sergio Perez just doesn't seem to quite have the race pace of his teammate right now. And they're also going to be worried that Lando Norris is gaining fairly substantially. Lando Norris in the last 4 laps has been almost half a second quicker or above. In fact, let's have a little look at the race trace right now and see what we can have a look at. Wow, that looks horrible. Let me sort that out. It's probably because Carlos only just pitted, didn't he? A little look. Yeah, George Russell, much, much quicker than Sergio Perez. And now he's going to get hauled into the pits. Oh, it's all changed anyway. Pit stops are occurring. Sergio Perez into the pits. Half race distance completed. 2 stints on the medium tyre for Sergio Perez. And this is going to be a long stint on the hards, it feels like, for Sergio Perez. Going on the opposite. So went medium, medium, now onto the hards. And Sergio Perez now pitted out of the way of Verstappen. And Verstappen can hopefully have a little run at the back of George Russell. Lando Norris is looking insanely quick right now, though. Is closing that gap to Max Verstappen every single lap. Let's have a little look at that. Lando Norris almost within DRS range. Let's have a little look at those top 6 drivers and see where they are running at. So you can see Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, actually fairly similar pace to one another. Not really having too much to worry about with one another at the moment. So the top 3 looking fairly comfortable, especially because George Russell behind, also fairly similar pace. You can see Max Verstappen lost out massively just behind Sergio Perez there. That's brought George Russell away from Verstappen, and you can see the converging lines here between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Lando Norris gaining on the back of the Red Bull every single sector right now, and these 2 lines are going to cross before you know it. It is going to be a very tight battle, and George Russell is also going to be trying to keep himself outside of that battle. Here comes Norris on Verstappen. It's half a second gap. DRS wide open for the McLaren car. The gap just a bit too far this time around, though. And they're going to get closer and closer to one another. Lando Norris with a huge advantage now with the DRS. Hamilton, 2 seconds the lead to Leclerc. 2.5 seconds to Piastri. 4 seconds to George Russell. That's what I mean with the top three looking very comfortably placed during this part of the Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo has actually made his second stop from the point scoring places onto the hard compound tyre and is now looking to dispatch the cars in front. Daniel Ricciardo makes a move on Logan Sargent and is up into 16th place once again. I think Daniel Ricciardo is a really good shout for some solid points here today if he can keep up this kind of pace. Yuki Tsunoda has only stopped once and is on the hard compound tyre behind. I think he's going to go a very long on those. Logan Sargent in 17th place needs to come in really on the medium tyre. Has done 14 laps on them and looks in a little bit of a no man's land. Nico Hulkenberg's race has also been a little bit thrown up into the air. Possibly a third stop required for Nico Hulkenberg a little bit later on. Lando Norris, though, again, closing in on Max Verstappen. He is still the fastest man out on track, is Lando Norris. Sergio Perez actually going faster now. Sergio Perez trying to close that gap. And in fact, Sergio Perez has managed to undercut George Russell here. You can see the gap between them, less than 20 seconds. So George Russell, if he does pit, will come out behind Sergio Perez. Of course, Sergio Perez is going to be on some sort of harsher, more used hard compound tyres. Oh, and Lando Norris, a lockup into the bus stop actually cost him quite valuable time to Max Verstappen. And a little bit of smoke coming from the tyres of Lando Norris's car as well. It's going to be an interesting battle between the two of them. Obviously, Austria flashbacks are starting to come into the brain. Just needs to be a little bit more patient than maybe he was that afternoon. Yuki Tsunoda closing into the back of Logan Sargent as well. And Logan Sargent just feels like a bit of a sitting duck right now in that Williams. Yuki Tsunoda trying to get it done in the chicane. But actually, a good move from Logan Sargent. Keeps the position just ahead of the Japanese driver. Max Verstappen 2 seconds off the back of George Russell. That was the race that we were expecting to happen. It's instead been Lando Norris who's caught up to the back of this little pack and is trying to get ahead of Verstappen. His tyres 5 laps fresher than the Dutchman's. Sergio Perez, though, going fastest of anybody right now. 147.2 from Sergio Perez to a 147.8, for instance. Carlos Sainz ahead of him as they just come around. Here is Sergio Perez coming around the final corner. Let's look at what Sergio Perez's lap time is like this lap, a 147.8. So slowed up a little bit of Sergio Perez, maybe just thinking about trying to hold on to those tyres a little bit longer. Lewis Hamilton, the tyres are still good running at the front of this Grand Prix. It does feel like the front three kind of locked in position. Just got a solid couple of seconds to themselves. Couple of seconds to Leclerc, then another couple of seconds to Piastri, 4 seconds to Russell. It's there where Max Verstappen is within 2 seconds. Lando Norris just edged outside of DRS range to Max Verstappen in 6th. Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez going for completely different strategies with the interesting ones to watch here. Lando Norris continuing on in 6th place. It's Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso who are technically running in the point scoring places right now. Although Alex Albon and Daniel Ricciardo really the drivers there because they have stopped for a second time. In fact, Daniel Ricciardo has got the jump on Alex Albon. So Daniel Ricciardo now running at the front of those drivers that have pitted a second time towards the back of the pack. Here comes Charles Leclerc. Here's Charles Leclerc, box for Ferrari. Box indeed. Leclerc, hard compound tyre off, hard compound tyre on. So Charles Leclerc preferring the hard compound tyre for what should be the final stint of this race. A 3.4 second stop for Ferrari. Leclerc's going to come out just behind his teammate. There's Sergio Perez going past the start-finish line, but Leclerc out ahead of the Mexican. Charles Leclerc now needs to really push. 2 seconds off Lewis Hamilton. Will Lewis Hamilton cover off the Ferrari and pit as well? Charles Leclerc deciding to go for it. Of course, about 18 to 20 seconds was what lost in the pits here. So Charles Leclerc, 21 seconds off the back of Lewis Hamilton. If that gets down to 18 or even close, we could start to see Hamilton under a little bit of pressure. Daniel Ricciardo also making moves once again. He's caught up to the back of Kevin Magnussen. Daniel Ricciardo with a very interesting afternoon, actually. Probably quite a fun afternoon for Daniel Ricciardo, because every time he comes up behind a car, he's got that tyre advantage and is able to just swing his way past. Daniel Ricciardo goes past Kevin Magnussen up into 14th place. See if Alex Albon can do the same behind in the Williams, because they're running along together. Lewis Hamilton, box. Hamilton is coming in then. He's going to cover off Charles Leclerc. So Leclerc's pitted, so has Lewis Hamilton. And we'll see if Hamilton can get out in front of Charles Leclerc. Should do in terms of the time. And it's a good stop from Mercedes as well, 2.4 seconds. So yeah, we'll comfortably get out in front of Charles Leclerc and into the lead of the race. That is Carlos Sainz coming around the corner, just in case you're worried. Lewis Hamilton fans, Charles Leclerc you can see coming around turn 1, but Lewis Hamilton comfortably ahead. We have Oscar Piastri now leading the race. Interesting that Oscar Piastri didn't come in, as Oscar Piastri held onto his tyres a little bit further. It's maybe got some pace that is left to come. That's felt like the undercut has been the way to go. Looking at the cars towards the back end of the grid, Daniel Ricciardo got the undercut on Alex Albon, is now running at the lead of that pack of cars that have stopped twice. Albon trying to get back past Kevin Magnussen if he can. And the race still could fall in people's favour. Carlos Sainz obviously running a very different strategy. So is Sergio Perez in all of this. Thoughts on the track looking like a glue gun. I can see it. I can see it. McLaren need to get it right this time. Gonna be tough. Lando Norris still running behind Max Verstappen. Does feel like Lando Norris could get the undercut now, but I think also knowing how the season has gone so far, generally speaking, the McLaren has been better on its tyres in the last few races. So it's like 6 of one, half a dozen the other. This looks good, Oscar. Let's go. Oscar Piastri does indeed set the fastest lap of the race. Let's see where Lewis Hamilton is. Hamilton, 13.8 seconds off the back of Piastri. Piastri is going to lose 18 seconds in the pit stop, possibly more. So Piastri is going to have to go hell for leather. Let's see what Lewis Hamilton can do on his fresh set of tyres, though, behind. Obviously, that lap time, including the pit stop, so not really giving us the rundown of where he is. Also, Lewis Hamilton catching up to the back of Carlos Sainz. Oscar Piastri, clean air is king. So wanting to go for the run out, pushing that car to its absolute limits. He is 5.5 seconds ahead of George Russell. So to be fair, Oscar Piastri can gamble here, because he's not really under pressure of losing the podium place. So he can go for it and go faster. Oscar Piastri, fastest lap indeed. Max Verstappen under pressure from Norris still. Hasn't been able to close that 2-second gap to George Russell ahead either. So second, third, fourth now on the road. He's looking like it's pretty much locked in. Carlos Sainz possibly boxing here. Box was the call for Carlos Sainz on the radio, and is indeed releases Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen comes into the pits as well. So Verstappen pits, Sainz pits, and isn't going to get in the way of the Red Bull. I was worried there that Carlos Sainz might get in the way of Verstappen and cause the Red Bull to lose some time, but didn't. A solid 2.4-second stop for Verstappen. Verstappen going to try and get the undercut maybe on George Russell. Lando Norris also still out on track. Lando Norris went long on the first stint, remember. So Lando Norris can kind of go even longer again. Maybe Lando Norris looking to go onto the medium tyre at the end. In fact, Max Verstappen has gone onto the medium tyre for the end of this Grand Prix. So looking for that tyre advantage. Has still come out behind his teammate Sergio Perez, though, and 2.5 seconds behind his teammate Sergio Perez. Carlos Sainz there has come out in 8th spot and running at the back of these top 4 teams as it stands. Esteban Ocon is still in 9th place. Fernando Alonso in 10th. The Alpine and the Aston Martin yet to have pitted. It's really Daniel Ricciardo and Alex Albon that the guys to watch as to whether they're going to score points this weekend here in Spa, as we've got 16 laps left to go around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Oscar Piastri, though, getting very racy indeed. A 1:47.6 for Piastri. 1:47.3, though, from Lewis Hamilton. So Hamilton still looking to lead this Grand Prix fairly comfortably. Lando Norris is going to come in for the McLaren team. So Lando Norris makes his way into the pits. He's just going to have to keep an eye on where he comes out. Obviously, looking like he's going to... Sergio Perez and Verstappen coming around turn 18 and turn 19. There are the 2 Red Bulls. And Lando Norris is going to come out behind Verstappen again. Actually is going to have a lot to do to catch up to the back of Verstappen again after being within DRS range of the Red Bull for a good few laps. Is now 1.5 seconds off the back of the Red Bull. I imagine Verstappen is probably going to be let go by Sergio Perez ahead. Verstappen now within DRS range of his teammate. Can't imagine the Red Bulls not getting on the radio and letting the Mexican know he's maybe not the driver they want in pole position for the team. Max Verstappen, though, the undercut on George Russell seems to have worked. Where is George Russell? 5.4 seconds. Verstappen 23.5. Verstappen is going to come out ahead of George Russell as it stands right now. So Russell possibly going for a 1-stop and going very, very long indeed. There is the swap we were expecting. Verstappen ahead now of Sergio Perez. They go through the middle sector together. Now Lando Norris has to try and get past the other Red Bull of Sergio Perez instead before he can get back up to behind Max Verstappen. Oscar Piastri box. Oscar Piastri is still going to come out behind Hamilton and Leclerc, though. So Oscar Piastri, slightly fresher tyres in the final stint. Maybe even a medium compound tyre available to Oscar Piastri for this final slot. Oh, and he's gone a bit deep. Very long indeed. And it's going to be a slow pit stop because of that. 4.4 seconds. He completely missed his blocks, did Oscar Piastri there. It's going to cost him a considerable amount of time. Going to stay ahead of Verstappen, though. Yes, just about. Verstappen comes around turn 1. Sergio Perez and Lando Norris behind. So Piastri, as much as he did that purple lap and looked like he was doing quite well, unfortunately, just cost himself quite a bit of time in the pit stop by going way too deep. Lando Norris, though, right underneath the rear wing of Sergio Perez, and there's nothing that the Mexican can do about that. Lando Norris almost passed before they even get to the DRS zone. DRS open, Lando Norris passed and up into 6th place. Sergio Perez down into 7th. The fresher tyres on the McLaren car, looking much better indeed. Here's a replay of Oscar Piastri's car going into the pits, and he just missed his braking zone completely long. The front jack man just stepped backwards, took the impact of Oscar Piastri's car. That is the risk you run, isn't it? Being that front jack. Just the jack punched into his chest. Jeez. 4.4 seconds stop. He seems okay now, though. Getting a little bit of screen time on TV and looks okay. Smiles at the camera and is all fine. Oscar Piastri comes out still in 4th place, but 3.5 seconds off Leclerc. George Russell. George Russell, are you going to stay out? Yes. So George Russell is going to try and go to the end on these tyres. He is 7 seconds ahead of his teammate. Shall we have a little look at the telemetries for this and see where George Russell really is running? So where's Sergio Perez? Sergio Perez is 19 seconds off the back of the front runner. So let's have a little look at the race trace and see where we are at. So got George Russell leading, Lewis Hamilton gaining on his teammate, but not significantly, to be fair. Look at the last few races. The last few race laps. Everybody is gaining on George Russell, as you would imagine. Hamilton less so than the likes of Piastri down here, and also the likes of Verstappen and Norris. Those three looking very quick now in this final stint. And to be fair, probably the fastest cars out on track all weekend have been the McLarens and the Red Bulls still. But the Mercedes, the Ferraris getting that advantage in terms of qualifying and also that opening lap, putting Lewis Hamilton in a much better position. Hamilton, Leclerc gaining, but it's going to be these three to keep an eye on. Piastri massively gaining on Leclerc in the last couple of laps. Verstappen the same. Norris closing in, not only to Verstappen, but also to the front runners. And it's just whether or not they've got enough in the tank to be able to close in and actually have a battle on their hands. Because we could see Russell under pressure, Hamilton under pressure, Leclerc under pressure from Piastri, who is the front runner of the McLarens and the Red Bulls right now. This could get very, very tasty indeed. Don't look away from your screens just yet. 12 laps left to go. We're going to look at where Oscar Piastri's lap time is in comparison to the rest once he does another lap. So a 1:45.8 from Piastri. And there you go. George Russell, a 1:47.5. Even Lewis Hamilton, only a 1:47 dead. Piastri looking really, really good right now. It's just whether or not he can get those overtakes done. The McLaren suddenly coming to life in this final stint. Verstappen in the mix as well. And Hamilton, Russell, Leclerc, all under pressure. Of course, Hamilton effectively leading this race, but will have to get past George Russell if Russell isn't going to pit. He is making up about half a second a lap, though, which will put George Russell right under pressure towards the end of this Grand Prix. It's just whether or not it's going to be Hamilton that catches the back of him first, or Leclerc or Piastri. Charles Leclerc actually kind of matching Lewis Hamilton's lap times. It's Oscar Piastri, the man out there, 1.2 seconds quicker than Leclerc last time around. Can he use that pace to actually get in front of the Ferrari, though? Goodness me. High tyre advantage indeed for Oscar Piastri, looking very, very racy indeed. Running back towards outside of the top 8. Fernando Alonso still running in 9th spot. Also possibly trying to go really, really long. Valtteri Bottas up into 10th for the Stake Sauber team. And Lance Stroll in 11th place. Daniel Ricciardo is in 12th. Esteban Ocon has actually been able to get up into 13th place and ahead of Alex Albon. Remember, Ricciardo and Albon with the two drivers running in the points before their second stops. Ocon has stopped for a second time and managed to get in front of Albon. So really well done to the Alpine team. And Williams now shaking their heads at the fact that they might have missed out on points here this weekend. Ocon very much on for points right now, if he can continue at this kind of pace. In fact, Daniel Ricciardo's tyres kind of fallen off a cliff a little bit. Esteban Ocon might be able to get in front of Daniel Ricciardo. And then Ocon is looking at trying to catch the back of the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, who's only 1.5 seconds up the road from Daniel Ricciardo. Keeping an eye on Lewis Hamilton's pace. He has upped it a little bit to a 1:46.6. So 1:47 dead again from Leclerc, but Piastri is just a 1:46.2. And that's in the dirty air of the Ferrari Charles Leclerc. Piastri desperately needs to get past Charles Leclerc now if he is going to be in contention for a victory here this weekend. Max Verstappen also looking pretty good, a 146.4 and a 146.6 from Norris. They're all right up there, but Lewis Hamilton, I think, is now putting the hammer down just a touch. 11 laps left here in the Belgian Grand Prix, the final Grand Prix before the summer break. Everybody wants to end on a high. And Hamilton 5.3 seconds behind George Russell, 5.3 seconds away from getting. And Lewis Hamilton asking on the radio, am I on pace to beat George Russell? And it's going to be close. Probably also talking about Oscar Piastri. Piastri now, 10 laps left to go. DRS range of the Ferrari. And here comes Oscar Piastri. It's going to be up the hill, right under the rear end of the Ferrari car. We saw Lando Norris dispatch Sergio Perez in very similar fashion a few laps ago. Can his teammate now, Oscar Piastri, follow Charles Leclerc up the hill? Through Eau Rouge they go. And up towards turn 5. DRS open for Piastri. Is he going to go for the move this time around? He's going to cut up to the outside of the track. Charles Leclerc covering the inside. Oscar Piastri trying to go the long way round, but not this time. The Monegasque holds on to third place. Charles Leclerc just about keeping him at bay. And Charles Leclerc is also going to be thinking about, well, Hamilton's going to be looking at this and thinking, thank you, Charles, doing your best, slowing down Oscar Piastri. And Max Verstappen on the radio is given the go-ahead by GP. 10 laps to go. We want 10 of your best laps. We know that Max Verstappen is capable of incredible things, especially here in Spa. Has done some insane things. Remember, Max Verstappen started in 11th place. He wasn't even part of the top 8 coming into this Grand Prix. He's already up into 5th place and now wanting to catch the back of the teams ahead. Lewis Hamilton supposedly within striking distance of George Russell in 5 laps time. So it's going to leave 5 laps at the end to close the gap. Shall we have a little look at the race trace pace just once more? I know that some people don't love it. I absolutely do. Looking at the pace here of Lewis Hamilton, look at that spike going straight up towards his teammate. You can see Oscar Piastri. This is the pace of Oscar Piastri. It's absolutely ridiculous. But now he's stuck behind Leclerc and has been stuck behind Leclerc for this lap. Needs to make it count this time around if he can, Charles Leclerc. And we're going to watch him, Oscar Piastri, and we're going to watch him behind Charles Leclerc once again come up the hill. He's even closer than he was last time. DRS open. Inside or outside for Oscar Piastri. It's outside of Charles Leclerc once again. Round the outside he goes. And into the chicane. Gets inside for the second corner. And gets the move done. Come on, Oscar. Here we go. This is what we want to see from the Australian. 5 seconds off the back of Lewis Hamilton. He's now been released from the back of Charles Leclerc. And let's keep an eye on the race trace pace of Oscar Piastri. He is right up there. He is now 5.5 seconds off the back of Lewis Hamilton. And I don't think Hamilton's going to have an easy time of getting past George Russell, to be honest with you. Be interesting to see what the radio messages are like between the two Mercedes cars as we get towards the end of this Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri, though, now effectively up into second place. Well, he's going to have to get past George Russell is the problem, because George Russell looking like he is going to go all the way to the end on those hard compound tyres. Going to be manage them as much as possible. But Piastri, 9.3 seconds off the back of George Russell, who is still leading this Belgian Grand Prix after going for a completely different strategy. But there is Lewis Hamilton around the final corner, and he's going to be able to see Lewis Hamilton in his wing mirrors now, George Russell. Piastri then also comes around the final corner just ahead of Charles Leclerc. Verstappen has closed to 1.5 seconds behind the Ferrari. And Lando Norris, also insane pace from Lando Norris, but he's also just kind of stuck behind Max Verstappen. It is the McLaren car that is looking the raciest of them right now in that top spot. Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz have gone for the complete wrong strategy, it seems, and have dropped off massively. Sergio Perez now 9 seconds off Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz another second behind, and Carlos Sainz actually trying to get past the Mexican. So Sergio Perez could end up finishing this race in 8th place. Fernando Alonso still holding on to 9th. Lance Stroll up into 10th. There's Daniel Ricciardo up into 11th place. And Ricciardo now within 0.4 of a second of Lance Stroll and getting back up into the point scoring places where he belongs. Daniel Ricciardo has been stunning at the back of the pack and definitely deserves to be that kind of best of the rest driver this weekend here in Belgium. He's just got to dispatch the 2 Aston Martins in front to get all the points available to him. There is a 7-second gap to Fernando Alonso in front. He's going to get past Lance Stroll, makes the move, and there it is for Daniel Ricciardo. He's up into 10th place and into the point scoring places. But Fernando Alonso, 7 seconds up the road on much older hard compound tyres. Can Daniel Ricciardo do it? Or is Fernando Alonso going to be able to use all of his strategy and all of his guile to keep that Aston Martin in 9th spot? Here comes George Russell round the past the start-finish line and round turn 1. He's now 2.8 seconds ahead of his teammate. Oscar Piastri is 8 seconds down the road. So again, looking a lot better. But Oscar Piastri not quite having the race pace that he did when he was behind Charles Leclerc. 147.1 from Piastri, 147 dead from Hamilton, 147.9 from George Russell. It is going to be close. They're going to gain. Here's Lando Norris with DRS behind Max Verstappen. Lando Norris with the fastest lap of the race so far still has that point extra in 6th place. But isn't able to get past Max Verstappen yet. Verstappen closing in to the back of Charles Leclerc. And after looking like it was going to be a point scoring place for Charles Leclerc. Sorry, it's going to be a point. After looking like it was going to be a podium finish for Charles Leclerc. He's now down in 4th place. And is 10 seconds off the back of George Russell. So unlikely to be able to get there in the final few laps. I'll tell you what though. Lewis Hamilton has really turned up the heat in terms of lap time this lap. It does feel like he's going to close into George Russell a lot quicker than we maybe even expected. What was it saying? It was saying 5 laps, wasn't it? He was going to have a go at the back of George Russell. Oh yeah, maybe 5. He's now 2.1 seconds behind his teammate, but really made the gains count in that last lap. In fact, let me show you on the race trace. Let me get that up for myself. Also for you guys. Just quickly separate that out. Here we go. So you can see Lewis Hamilton, that blue line underneath. George Russell, the blue line at the top of the standings. George Russell has been leading this race since lap 31. But Lewis Hamilton has been gaining and gaining and gaining. You can see the spike here in the middle of that last lap. Really going for it now, Lewis Hamilton. Absolutely rattling around. Oscar Piastri is also gaining, but I think Lewis Hamilton was maybe holding back a little bit in reserve because he's just flown away. Charles Leclerc is pretty much matching Max Verstappen and Lando Norris in terms of pace since being overtaken by Oscar Piastri. So it is Oscar Piastri who was trying to get into it. Here's Carlos Sainz though on Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz is actually going to move up into 7th. And does. Sergio Perez is going to fall to the back of these top 8 cars. And unfortunately for the Mexican, is going to probably end this first half of the season with another underwhelming performance in 8th spot. Lando Norris we're on board with. He's within a second of Verstappen, but Verstappen closing to within a second of Charles Leclerc. So the DRS is not going to be a huge advantage for Lando Norris unless Max Verstappen can dispatch Charles Leclerc in front. Hamilton now within 1.3 seconds of his teammate. Piastri has closed the gap from 9 seconds to 6.5. And George Russell is going to have a real tough time holding on to a podium place here. Although I feel like holding on to 3rd place is probably going to be okay for George Russell. Because Max Verstappen's got to still get past Charles Leclerc. And Leclerc is quite a gap away from Piastri. George Russell might have done the one-stop strategy perfectly here to get themselves into a double podium finish. Hamilton looking to win this Grand Prix. And I think George Russell on pace right now is on for second, maybe third. If Oscar Piastri can make a move on the final lap of the Grand Prix, it is really going to go down to the literal final seconds. And Hamilton 0.7 of a second quicker once again. Piastri on the radio being told there's going to be action up ahead. Of course, Hamilton has still got to get past George Russell, so there's going to be action. There's going to be defending from Russell, I'm sure. The Mercedes team probably on the radio to both of their drivers, but I don't know. You've got to let them race. I mean, you got to let them race at this point because Russell is on for a second place finish anyway. And Lewis Hamilton a second off his teammate. The two British drivers in the Mercedes cars. Hamilton leaving at the end of the season to Ferrari. His replacement, George Russell, to lead the team. But which one will come out on top this time around? A tear-off goes towards the Mercedes car of Lewis Hamilton. Russell just maybe directing that towards a brake duct, if he can, to take off that brake duct of Lewis Hamilton. But here they come around the final couple of corners. They're going to start the final lap. The fifth final lap. 0.5 of a second. And Lewis Hamilton on the radio. Give each other enough space. They are allowed to race. No team orders at Mercedes this weekend. They're going to allow Lewis Hamilton to have to do it the hard way. And they're going to allow George Russell to defend the position that he has earned himself in this Grand Prix by going super long on this second stint. But DRS for Lewis Hamilton is now available. He is within that striking distance range. Oscar Piastri also putting in some quick laps. Goodness gracious me, a 1:46.4 from Piastri. Remember, a few laps ago was 9 seconds off the back of George Russell. Now less than 4.5 seconds, the gap between Russell and Piastri. Piastri very much in contention here. If Hamilton can't dispatch Russell quickly, Piastri's going to catch up to the back of these two and is going to be right there probably in the final couple of laps. It's going to be very, very close if Oscar Piastri is going to get within touch and distance of this. In fact, you could do with the two Mercedes drivers just having a little bit of contact or maybe running off the road with one another. George Russell going from that 2-stop to a 1-stop, making it work right now. Esteban Ocon has actually been able to get in front of Daniel Ricciardo in all of this and steal that final point scoring place. Fernando Alonso has done what George Russell has done and made the 1-stop really work. It's gone very, very long, but Fernando Alonso still running in 9th place with 3 laps left to go. George Russell then, 0.5 second ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Let's watch the two Mercedes go up the hill together and see what is going to come as they get towards turn 5. Russell's going to be using every single little bit of battery that he's got left. Hamilton the same. DRS is going to be open for Lewis Hamilton. They come up to the hill. Down this straight. Lewis Hamilton's going to peel to the inside. Is he going to have a little look? No. George Russell's got just enough and Hamilton has to duck out of it before they get to the corner. Oscar Piastri now 2.8 seconds off the back of Lewis Hamilton. 3 seconds behind the lead of this Grand Prix. And Max Verstappen is frustratingly still behind Charles Leclerc in all of this. Just having a little look at the race trace for them. And Charles Leclerc's been able to get round turn 7 still ahead of the Red Bull. So Leclerc holding on to 4th. Here we are then. Lando Norris still stuck behind Verstappen as well. And those two have to be so frustrated with the way that this race has rolled into itself. Hamilton, though, 0.5 second behind Russell. Again, Russell's going to do everything he can through these corners to build up the battery and make sure that he's holding on to as much advantage as he can going into the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix. Hamilton's going to go for it. Coming around the bus stop chicane once again. The two Mercedes drivers still lead. Piastri now can see this battle coming up in front. He's 2.3 seconds off the lead as Piastri and needs, oh my goodness, down towards turn 1. Hamilton actually gets a little bit closer to Russell than I think he was hoping to. And maybe Russell just playing some mind games there. Trying to go a little bit deep. Both of them went a little bit deep. Hamilton, though, behind Russell once again. Another lap that ticks away, and another lap that Lewis Hamilton, I don't think, is going to be able to get the move done. Isn't able to get the move done. Russell goes through turn 5 in the lead once again. 1 lap left to go, and George Russell might have absolutely played a blinder here. The strategy has just fallen into his hands. I'll be honest, I wasn't looking at George Russell as the winner of this Grand Prix. We had Hamilton, Piastri, and Leclerc running in the podium places pretty comfortably towards the beginning and the middle stint of this race. But George Russell has made this work incredibly well. And George Russell is going to lead the race going into the final lap of the Grand Prix. And Lewis Hamilton is going to have one final lunge at this. Oscar Piastri, unfortunately for the Australian, just hasn't quite had enough to get into contention for the victory here. But he's going to have a well-fought podium place for his troubles. Charles Leclerc in 4th, Verstappen still in 5th, Lando Norris still in 6th, Carlos Sainz is up into 7th place, and Sergio Perez has dropped off a cliff. Oh, in fact, Sergio Perez has come in for some soft compound tyres. He's going to try and steal that fastest lap point, it looks like, the Mexican driver. We've then got Fernando Alonso has played a blinder. He's going to finish in 9th place, and Esteban Ocon is going to finish in the final point scoring spot in 10th. Real shame for Daniel Ricciardo, who I thought put in a very, very solid stint this weekend, but Ocon has just been able to outdo him. But let's have a little look then. We have Russell, Hamilton, and Piastri, all with DRS. Let's see if Russell can hold on to the lead of the Grand Prix. The final lap here in Spa. The DRS is wide open for Lewis Hamilton. Is he going to be within touching distance? I don't think he is, you know. Lewis Hamilton has not got enough to close into George Russell. And George Russell, you have to hand it to him, has done incredibly. He has played a blinder going for the one-stop strategy compared to everybody else. Lewis Hamilton actually falling away from his teammate through the first sector after locking up into turn 7. And George Russell started 6th place in this Grand Prix, got himself up into contention for the podium places, did not look like he was going to be running at the front of this Grand Prix when we had the final couple of pit stops. But look what he has done. The main man at Mercedes is going to take himself a second victory in Formula One this year. Oh my goodness me. For the 3rd time this year, we're going to see a Mercedes on the top step of the podium, but it's not the Mercedes I was expecting to see. George Russell coming around the final couple of bends into the bus stop. He still leads, and it's George Russell around the final corner. Lewis Hamilton within touching distance, but not enough to get there. Lewis Hamilton finishes in 2nd place. Oscar Piastri behind in 3rd. Stunning from George Russell. Take a bow. Charles Leclerc finishes in 4th. Verstappen 5th. Lando Norris finishes in 6th place behind. Carlos Sainz will finish in 7th. And Sergio Perez, going for that fastest lap, will finish a distant 8th place in this one. A well-earned win from George Russell. Fernando Alonso's played an absolute blinder there as well. Gone for the same strategy as George Russell and is going to finish in 9th place. Esteban Ocon is going to round out the point-scoring places. Daniel Ricciardo 11th, Lance Stroll 12th, Alex Albon 13th, Pierre Gasly 14th, Kevin Magnussen in 15th place, Bottas 16th, Tsunoda 17th, Logan Sargent 18th, and Nico Hülkenberg at the back of the pack in 19th place. There is the confirmation Sergio Perez did manage to get the fastest lap of the race, and by a considerable margin, a 1:44.7, and gets the extra point after finishing in 8th place. George Russell, though, is going to go into the summer break a Grand Prix winner for the second time this year. It's going to celebrate another podium finish for, another double podium finish, I should say, for the Mercedes team. A 1-2 for the Mercedes team here in Belgium. Piastri in third, Leclerc fourth, Verstappen fifth. And that is a big jump in points for the Mercedes team. We've got a real battle on our hands, you know, in terms of the constructor standings. We really could see a three-way fight at the top of the constructor standings moving in to the final few Grand Prix weekends after the summer break. 10 races still to come. Goodness gracious me. Whew. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, leave a like on the video. Of course, we will be back with these live streams once again after the summer break. But also, we've got some big things coming during the summer break. So make sure you're subscribed for all the videos, the shorts that are coming soon as well. And I'm going to be live later on today, joined by Mr. Pulse himself, to talk that Belgian Grand Prix and how George Russell managed to just about do the unthinkable and get himself the win here from 6th place on the grid. Absolute magic on those tires from George Russell. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave a like, all that good stuff. And I will see you in a bit for the post-race reaction.